Performance Evaluation Superintendent information was received. And we'd like to do the Pledge of Allegiance, which last time I asked Mr. Smith if he could do it, and he disappeared. So, Mr. Smith, can you help lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Or communications and celebrations, Dr. Gillian.
Thank you, members of the board. We have a number of celebrations this evening. The first is our ACES program. This is the after-school enrichment program for students in our school district, and we have again received the funding for the program to the tune of $646,000 for extended day learning and activities for our kids. The second celebration is to recognize and thank Westmore Oaks. I believe they're here this evening. For a couple things, in fact. One's a generous donation of $7,500 toward classroom supplies and student field trips. And this is from the PTSA, and again from the PTSA at Westmore Oaks. One soccer goal to match the MOT purchase of the other soccer goal. So that's true partnership, right? So we have two soccer goals, and that's important for a soccer game, I understand. Unless you have all defense on one, never mind. Anyway, so we're very appreciative of the $2,000 in contribution to Westmore Oaks from the PTSA. That's it on celebrations.
Thank you. We now have a student association report and CSEA. There's Deborah.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. First of all, I want to say that we're so glad we get to go back and also support
Thank you, Deborah. We have a WTA, Dawn Stoffer.
I'm sorry, I have to announce that a science teacher from River City, Claire Wiley, passed away. She leaves behind a husband and an infant child. The fundraiser that was held for her a couple of weeks ago did raise over $5,000 for her family, though. That's one good thing. And information on her memorial, we'll make sure that it's passed on to you folks. On another note, I've spoken with our negotiations chair, and we hope to get things moving real quickly once we get back in school, and excited to move forward on this. I think it's going to be a good negotiation season. Hopefully, we will be seeing all of you tomorrow morning, and it looks like this will be for the new employee orientation, and around 11 o'clock will be introductions. And if that's not incentive enough, there should be enough food for lunch. And then on for back to school thing, which is on Monday morning, and The school will be providing breakfast at 7, and the superintendent will be talking at 8, and so we hope to see you there for that. Thank you very much.
I don't have any public comments at this time. Board superintendent comments, committee updates, Ms. Leland?
I don't have any updates. I'm just excited to see school starting on Monday, and tonight we're going to be hearing a lot about the improvements on the campuses, facility improvements, and so just I know that parents are already getting your children ready and getting them to bed earlier and getting them in a little bit of the routine, I hope. So that's all I have to report.
Thank you. Ms. Kirby-Gonzalez?
I would like to first thank the staff for the fundraiser they did for Claire Wiley, because it was just really beautiful to see your family of teachers come together and staff members come together in the fundraising that they did. It was really just touching. So thank you also to CSEA. I appreciated the conference, as did my 5-month-old, and it was very nice to have a little dance break. They had very serious, very professional, well-done conference discussing one of the biggest things is just respect and how far that can go with staff, and really appreciated that. And then, which I would have liked in my own professional development recently, they took a little break to dance to Let's Get Happy, and the whole auditorium was just full of really excited people who were excited about their work and loved their jobs, and it was just really nice to be around people that are so excited to go back to work. So thank you to them. I'd like to thank Mr. Spalding for standing out with me in the very, very hot weather at last week's farmers market. We had a district booth, and it was just a really, really nice opportunity to talk with families, answer questions about TK, talk to families about how they can learn more about their neighborhood school. We encouraged a lot of people to just go visit. And so for our principals to know that we're encouraging them to come on campus and talk to principals and visit to see how the school feels for them. And so I appreciated that. Also, I'm looking forward to the new teacher orientation tomorrow. I do have to clarify with you, though, Dawn, I'm supposed to meet with a principal at 11 tomorrow. I thought it was a little later to be at new teacher orientation. So is it 11 that we need to be there? Okay, all right. I will be there at 11. Okay. Thank you. That is all.
Thank you. I'd like to give my condolences to the Wiley family, and I know she will be missed. I also am excited about school starting. I want to thank all the staff at all the schools, all the facilities. The campuses just look gorgeous. If you haven't gone by, I know some of the sprinklers probably aren't making people happy, but I can tell you the campuses are looking clean, and looking forward to all the students to come in. Especially excited about River City. This was the first year they did a 2-day freshman orientation. It was very informative. They used a link crew, some of the older students, to help some of the freshmen in, so they do have a friendly face when they come in. And I think it was well organized, and I'm really impressed, so I'm excited about looking for a great year at the high school. Let's see. And I think that's it. Mr. Gillian?
Thank you. A couple things I wanted to cover have already been addressed, and primarily our new teacher orientation tomorrow. I want to assure Ms. Kirby-Gonzalez that part of my responsibility is to make sure that you would be introduced whenever you arrive. So if you can be there at 11, great. If not, we'll recognize you then, of course. And I know Don will be speaking with the teachers, I think, through lunch, and there'll be opportunity for that. The other thing, school does start Wednesday, so we're gearing up and ready to go. There's a lot of excitement. People have been returning, and we're certainly getting ready for that. And with that, you'll hear more tonight from Mr. Landsberger about the things we've done over the summer months to prepare. So, all good news. And Cabinet will be serving breakfast Monday morning if you can make it at 7 o'clock. Thank you.
I'd like to open the public hearing for the Sunshine of Washington Unified School District bargaining proposal to WTA. Close the public hearing. On to information and discussion items. Item number 1, summer 2014 facility and operational improvements.
Good evening, how are you? As soon as we get the presentation up, we'll go through it. I'll be brief. A lot of good things have happened this summer. One of them being a new presentation system being installed here in this facility, and we're still trying to learn how best to work with it. So we're getting ready to go back to school. I'm going to go through a presentation with you tonight. Know that as you see this, we're not totally completely done. We usually bring this presentation to you in the month of September. And with the amount of work that we try and do during the summer, we will work all the way up through Tuesday with school starting on Wednesday. So some of the things that you're going to see aren't 100% completely done. The pictures that you're going to see are going to show that as well. We're going to start off with Southport Elementary. If you recall, we added a portable to this site for the VAPA program. Find these two pictures very interesting. You'll notice there's a clearance in between the portables and the buildings, and that's how tight it was to squeak a portable in and around the solar array to add it to the Southport site. It goes on the backside between the 6-8 classrooms, and that's the portable. It has been painted. We painted the Southport campus this summer as well. And so from a timing perspective, we made sure that that portable got put on site before the campus was painted. This is what the campus looks like painted. This is the MPE room front and back, and this is the front of the campus. We kept the color palette that was there. It's a little bit darker as far as the base color, but the trim, the white color, the trim is the same with the blue for all of the metal work and the roof and the downspouts and the gutters. If you recall, last year when we did our solar project, we had benches put underneath the solar array that is in front of the 8th grade portables at Southport. Last year, Southport was adopted by the Crocker Art Museum. We bought some 3,600 tiles in between Southport and Stonegate, and the students did the artwork on them. And this summer, we sent them off to a kiln, had them fired and glazed, brought back, and we had a mason install the tiles as part of our summer work. So now, those seating areas for the Southport kids also include artwork from the students themselves. We think it really sets off that part of the campus. It looks great. Bridgeway Island marquee doesn't look really good. It looked like a tombstone until MOT got a hold of it. And now it looks much better when you drive up to that school. Again, that's what it looked like. I'm surprised we left it there that long. That's what it should look like. So in case we need to see it twice. So. Looks fantastic. Very pleased with the work that MOT did on that particular part of the project. River City High, there'll always be something new to do at River City High. The bottom right picture is all brand new computers for the photo lab there because the computers there they were having some issues with. They got a donation of some computers. They worked with Tom to get this installed over this summer so they have a new lab for it to start the school year. You might have heard about the issues with the MIDI lab and they flip-flop when the school was first open. They put the MIDI lab in the choir room. Now that the choir's gotten bigger, have a vaulted ceiling, the MIDI lab had to go back into a classroom. The classroom they put it in had cabinets with water and everything. Electronic keyboards, water, not a great combination. So this summer we ripped all the cabinets and the water out, safed it off so that they could have an actual computer piano lab functioning. It was all kind of pushed off to the side to keep it away from the water. It didn't work really well last year. The gymnasium floor at the high school has been a challenge. We closed the gym for, I believe, up to 6 weeks as we started the summer, and they stripped it all the way down and redid the floor again. It came out, looks fantastic with the logo in the middle, Raiders on both ends underneath the basketball hoops, and we hope that it will last much longer than it did the last time because the prior repair was only a 2-year repair. So, again, stripped it all the way down to the wood and rebuilt it. Westmore Oaks roof replacement, this was the biggest project that we did this summer. This is what it looks like now. The top picture there, if you look at all of the spaghetti wire and stuff that's off to the left, that's what was on top of that roof. If you recall, we went through a whole series of analysis and we bid it and then we didn't do the work and then we went and looked at it again before we actually did the work. If you ask, okay, well, where'd all that stuff go? We stuck it under the eaves. We pulled everything off of the roof. We came up with new points for entry for the mechanical and the gas. We ran it subterranean down the eaves and down the backside. It's going down the walkway, that long walkway that you have there at that school. That's the next part that we'll do, and we'll continue to take the infrastructure off the roof and put it underneath where it belongs. Another fantastic thing that they do, it just amazes me when they didn't have this done before, is you'll notice the gas line is painted yellow so that you'll know it's a gas line. None of the gas lines on the prior roofs were painted yellow, so you couldn't tell it was a gas line. So we're going back through and we're making sure that's being done as well. We added another special education room to the Westmore Oaks campus. This was one of the old science rooms that was on that campus. We stripped it all the way down, took everything out of it, including the old tile. We cleaned it and put in a new floor, new windows, and this is going to be for orthopedic low incident students. So we also, in the back room that used to be a chemical room, for the science lab, we put in running water, and we have service there so they can have a stack washer and dryer, so if they have an issue with the students during the day, they have a place where they can clean clothes. Alice Norman, the entry gate at Alice Norman has been a problem for us where we have people just walking through. We have a new look here. It's not, it's more inviting. You don't have the wrought iron fence that made it look very institutional. And that slide went really fast, but if you'll notice the entry gate is pushed back. It's behind the door of the office. So when someone goes to visit this campus, they walk into the office, they sign in, and the receptionist can hit a buzzer that will unlock the gate and let the person have access to the campus. So another improvement as far as keeping that campus secure for our youngest students. Shade structure went into Alice Norman again. Every year, it seems, we apply for and get a grant from the California Department of Education specifically for the preschool program, and it's for facility improvements. And so we added yet another shade structure to the site. Looks great. It's the double wide structure that's in the upper left. It's kind of from two different angles there. That means the entire front area of the that part of the campus has some part of the playground that has shade. There's no exposed areas at all. We did the same thing at Stonegate. There is one preschool classroom at Stonegate, so we split the grant in between the two sites and added a shade structure there as well. Continuing projects that we're still working on because the work will never, ever, ever, ever be done. Is bathrooms at Bright. We were going to rehab some bathrooms, and at first we were just going to take some of the older student bathrooms and change them into more of an adult-appropriate bathroom. And as we evaluated that, we decided that wasn't the best way to go. So we're taking a series of bathrooms there in final drawings right now. Project should be done before the end of the calendar year. There is a distribution room at River City High that, when the school was originally built, was never plumbed for mechanical systems, and it holds computer equipment, and so we're plumbing it for mechanical, and we're going to add cooling to the room so that Tom doesn't lose any more equipment. The Bright CTE remodel is in the planning phases. We've asked for costs from the 3 architects of record that we have. We should have those by the end of the week. Next board meeting, you should see an architectural contract to start the Bright CTE campus. District office remodeling, the planning phase for that is starting. You have on consent, again, an architectural contract for that particular project. This is a result of the additional staffing that we have under LCAP. At this point, we have no place to house that staffing, so we have to do some remodeling to the district office so that we can have a seat for them. Stonegate Computer Lab C40 will be adding another computer lab to Stonegate. We've had beginning conversations with the principal there. We hope to start that project by October. And we're going to get some money out of the ERP program that got funded in the budget this year, and so we're working with our consultants to figure out what part of that money is a reimbursement that we can spend on any project we choose versus things that are tied to a specific project that we'll start pushing forward. The dollars that we spent this year are here. The most expensive project obviously was the roof at Westmore Oaks. At one point we were looking at it costing us almost $1 million, and that's when we went back through and said, let's look at this again. So to have a project come out at $620,000, all costs included, we think is fantastic. Each one of the projects there individually listed. $994,000 is what we spent out of Fund 25. Any other project that you saw in there that I mentioned that is not listed here specifically with the dollar amount was work that was done internally by our MOT crew, and so we don't track the cost the same way because it's just embedded into our routine maintenance cost. And that's it. Any questions?
I do have a public comment. Do you want me to?
You can go to that.
Public comment. Don Stoffer. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Let's talk about the budget.
On the action item. Okay.
The action.
Don Stoffer doesn't want to talk to you about this one.
It's okay, we'll talk to him in a little bit then.
Not right now.
Is there any board comments, questions?
No, I just wanted to thank you for all the work. I've been on a couple of the sites. I've been over to Alice Norman, and it's really exciting to see the shade structures and the whole front redone. And I don't think I'd been over there to see even the parking lot redo. And I know staff is really happy about that. So things are looking good. Really appreciate all the work.
I appreciate it. We wouldn't know about things like the painted gas line on top of the roof if it was not for you coming to give a presentation. And these are important things that I think need to get out a lot. We see people who might drive by, and we were talking about sprinklers because that's what they see and that's what they talk about, and it looks like we're wasting water, and call up MOT and get some good answers about how we're actually conserving in some ways. But I think it's important for us to get the message out of what we're doing and do a better job of doing that, so that everybody can hear what's happening at the schools, because I think too often that message isn't always getting out. So that's our job up here, and I'll help to get that message out. And I have a quick question about the Stonegate Computer Lab. And I'm just wondering about the rationale for that as we talk about moving away from labs a little bit and having carts go around. Do you know why we're going to a lab route?
I believe it's replacing what is a computer cart currently, and it's just adding an additional space. It's going to follow whatever we end up doing with the Wi-Fi installation and the Common Core installation of computers, just that as we go through, we're going to add another lab to that particular site, and we're going to do a room reconfiguration at the same time. So for me, when I call it a computer lab, it's more of a room reconfiguration versus the actual technology component itself.
And I want to thank all the staff for, I think sometimes the public thinks that it's summertime and the school district's all at home enjoying summer, and unfortunately that's not how it works. And bringing this to our attention, we can see all the work that you've done, and as a district we're very lucky to be able to have the funds to do this. So a lot of the small things, people might think they're small things, but I saw a lot of securing and making our campus safe for our kids. So thank you very much.
Very welcome. Thank you.
So, information item number 2, discuss district policies, procedures regarding overflow. Is that?
Thank you. Real quickly, I'd just like to kick this off. As you know, board members, there's been a great deal of concern throughout the community regarding our overflow procedures, and this year it's been worse than it has been in the past. We're in a situation where we, of course, want to accommodate students at their neighborhood school. That's a board objective and certainly our intent. In years past, we had 2 different departments working on transfer of students. One group was working on interdistrict transfer requests, people that actually wanted to move from one school to another based on their personal needs. And we were accommodating that through one department, but unbeknownst to the work at that particular office, another office was dealing with overflow issues. So that created a great deal of chaos. And when Bill Spalding came in with his team, he devised a strategy to coordinate that so we take care of the transfers first and accommodate those people that want to make moves before we determine who actually needs to be moved. Another practice that was implemented, and you see this in the policy that will be discussed further with you this evening, that it's been our practice to try and bring kids back to their neighborhood school after 1 year away if it was necessary to overflow those students. And if in fact that particular class is still impacted, that forces overflow of other kids that were maybe here even prior to the last group to return. So the domino effect is it created a situation, particularly at Bridgeway this year, that's resulted in the need to overflow kids that have been at that site for multiple years, 4 or 5 years. So this is something we welcome the opportunity to bring this to the board so we can kind of brainstorm some ideas. Jerry Smith and Bill will be talking in more detail about this, and I know we'll be hearing from some parents with concerns as well. So thank you. Bill and Jerry, please.
Good evening, Vice President Cruz, members of the board, Dr. Gilliland. Thank you for that introduction, Dr. Gilliland. There are a couple things, just as we go into this, that I wanted to just kind of speak to and clarify. And I've asked Jerry to step forward because he works with this policy most intimately. From your transmittal, you'll see that the policy that governs this is AR Administrative Regulation 5116. And the procedures that were established for how overflow would take place were established actually a number of years ago, predate really all of us in this room. But it was really designed to try to, as Dr. Gilliland said, to return students who were overflowed to their home school as quickly as possible, to do that for a short time. And I also wanted to kind of comment on what Dr. Gilliland had said about transfer and overflow. One of the things that I discovered when I came in is, as Dr. Gilliland was talking about in 2011, 2 offices were running the whole process and not really in concert with one another. By bringing it into the Student Services Office, what we've been able to do is use transfer to the advantage of schools and districts so that we actually reduce the amount of overflow that we have to do. And I just really want to say very strongly on Jerry's behalf and on behalf of our office, overflow is a last resort. We don't want to overflow people away from their home school, and it's been a very strong goal of this board for a number of years to really have neighborhood schools, and that's where our kids are. So so really in this policy and in this practice, it was really designed to try to reduce that. And we've done a number of other things as well. Perfect example is our 6th grade at Westfield this year. If we had this is the first year we're having, and the only year I think we're having 6th grade at Westfield. If we had that group of students also in this 6th grade mix, which is it's a bubble in our system, that would be another group that would be overflowing. So what we've really tried to do through transfer, through the use of space, is to really reduce the overflow system. And usually it works, but that's where you have schools and grades where there's kind of the normal attrition. And in this case with Bridgeway, with a couple of grade levels, there isn't the normal attrition that we see. And so what that has happened is that there's kind of a new cohort that's overflowed each year as each year serves kind of a cohort serves their time out of Bridgeway. And that's what has made it rather difficult. And I'm sure why a number of folks here want to speak to you. I can certainly understand that frustration. Jerry, did you want to talk any more about, or have you had any questions?
Good evening, folks. First of all, the folks from Bridgeway, I'm the guy behind the phone calls. Okay, so but you can put a face with a name. I've done some research on this situation, especially since this is my first time going through this. It seems that about 6 years ago, the process of overflow and the way that it was the policy was interpreted at that point in time was that if you made every reasonable effort to get people back and you would only be overflowed for 1 year, and no more than one time, they determined that that in their mind meant the fact that after 1 year of overflow, you would return and the next group would come in and have to be overflowed following. Because of this practice, this Bridgeway class right now in 6th grade, going into this year, when I inherited it, had 44 kids that had quietly been overflowed over the last few years. Because of that, there were 9 overflowed last year, 9 families or 9 students. On top of that, 11 new families have moved into that area in the 6th grade this year. So when they went in, they were the first 11 folks we pulled out and overflowed right away. That still left the 9 that we had returned the year before, and now we're at 20 families that we've overflowed at this moment. Because of that, if you add the 44 and the 20, at this point in time, 66 of the 130 families in this Bridgeway class have now been overflowed. If we continue this process and use this same policy and do 20 and 20 the next 2 years, that would be the minimum we would do, okay? Based on that, 104 of the 130 kids in this class would have been overflowed at least one time. That means those students, those families that sat out there that first Saturday in February like they do throughout the district, only the first 26 people in line would not have been overflowed. Simply put, from my perspective, for somebody who's new to this district, this is not working. It's simply not working. It's The way we use the practice, especially with combining it with past practice, is causing some major problems. In a lot of our classes over the years, I don't think it's been a major issue. If there's 2 or 3 people we have to overflow and then we return them in overflow, there's usually movement, some attrition, and it takes care of itself. And we also have the ability by contract, if we're over slightly in a class, that the superintendent can choose to write a letter and expand the class a little bit. For instance, at Bridgeway, if there's 110 kids who are allowed to be in 5 sections, if there were 115 kids and it was determined that was best for those students, we could actually send a letter and go to 23 for a year if we had to. This class has just put itself in the situation's put the class in a horrible situation. Scott and I did some looking at numbers. In 2011-12, this class had 106 students. Now it's up to 130. There's been 24 families that have moved into that area, all of which have been overflowed, okay? All of which have been overflowed at one time or another, but not consistently. And here's what I mean by that. From my view, after doing the first year, here's some multiple problems. First of all, the 1-year promise that you'll get returned simply doesn't work. It's not right. If you take a class like, for instance, at Bridgeway, at the very first year, if they had 125 students and we had 110 that were going to be in the class and we overflowed 15, and then we return that 15 and then overflow the next 15 and we go down the line, by the time we're through 7th grade, there's no one left in the class to overflow. And then we have to start over. It makes no sense. There's also a lot of inconsistency of what overflow means, okay? Doing part of the research and information I've received from some of the families, I've looked into it. There's been students, and not of their fault, that got overflowed to another school in the district. The spot came open 9 days later. They got to go back, but it counted as their year of overflow because overflow was overflow. There's no definition of it. In many of our minds, it means a full year, but as far as the system's concerned, it's still overflow. If students come in the 4th grade, they serve their overflow year right then and get it over with, and they get back. They stay there, where families that have been there since younger age, 2nd grade this year, et cetera, they have to go leave for a year. It doesn't make any sense to me. We need to look at the policy. On behalf of my office, I give apologies to the families that are having to go through this. It's very frustrating for all of us to enforce a policy that doesn't work, but it is the policy at this time, so we're going to try to give some thoughts and ideas. I think we need to take a stand, and by saying that, I think we need to look at the policy which most districts do, which is basically last in, first out. Basically saying that if there's 110 spots in that class and you're number 111, you're overflowed, but you're overflowed for a long time, possibly, until a spot opens and you're the first one to bounce in. And we keep a list and we notify people when their turn comes up, if something comes up in that neighborhood. The pros with that, number one, okay, there's no more stay and return letters that we send out every year. Do you want to stay at the new school or do you want to return back to your old school? We don't have to play that game anymore. Another positive, I think, on the Saturday morning, it doesn't matter if you're number 1 in line or number 110 in line at those schools, you have the same power. It doesn't matter. So it doesn't mean that people have to spend all night and play the game. The last 2 years at Bridgeway, which is our biggest school as far as sign up, we didn't even make 110 on that Saturday. The first 110. With everybody staying, we would have made sure that everybody would stay in that class. Anybody that came after that 110 number, they would be put on the overflow list and have to wait their turn. I think it's fair, I think it's clean, and I think it's reasonable. The one con with the situation, if you do that, as a board, if we bring that to you and you decide to do that, is that if we bring it even in January, and we do that, if we go to the last 20, say for instance in this class that came into the neighborhood, we're going to be overflowing some people that have already been overflowed once. It's guaranteed it's going to happen. So there's going to be some upset people. But in reality, I think it's more fair to the people that have been there since the very beginning that they are in that neighborhood school. If you buy a house in a neighborhood, I think it's a wonderful neighborhood, but you're taking a chance that you might not get in that class if that class is overloaded. Are there any questions?
I think we're going to take public comments first, and
Beautiful.
then the
Thank you.
board will address them.
Thank you.
Before we make it to public comments, I do want to read on our agenda, our public comments, that at this time, members of the public may address the board on topics that are under the jurisdiction of the board and are not on the agenda, although the board may, by law, may not take action at this meeting pursuant to the Education Code 3514535. Individual speakers may be limited to 3 minutes to comment on any topic. Public comments consisting of individual charges, complaints, or derogatory remarks about any district employee are requested to be submitted in writing to the administration in accordance with the district's complaint procedure. So at this time, we'll start with, is it Robert Finnegan?
Good evening. Thanks for having us. I just kind of wanted to speak on behalf and talk a little bit about what Jerry just recently discussed. My son is one of the kids who is going to be overflowed to another school. Obviously, pretty stressful, concerning, some anxiety associated with it. And in terms of, the definition of overflow, just to give you an example, he had been waitlisted for quite some time when he was in first grade. And we didn't send him to a school in West Sacramento. We sent him to a private school until he became available, or a spot became available. Under the definition, I guess that's not considered overflow because he didn't go to a school in West Sacramento. But I mean, he was still waitlisted just like any other kid. Okay, so I also have some concerns about, we haven't heard anything specific about transportation in terms of after-school sports. So right now, he can bike to and from school. He can participate in after-school sports, get himself home fairly easy. If he goes to Stonegate, he's all the way across Jefferson. We haven't heard anything back in terms of what's going to happen in terms of transportation for kids who want to be in sports or who want to be in band. And just finally, I am in agreement with Jerry. It should be a first-in type of scenario. We moved into the neighborhood 12 years ago. Andrew's been in Bridgeway since second grade, and it's a life-changing experience for a kid who's going from 5th to 6th grade. He's got all his friends over there at Bridgeway Island. He's done well in school. He likes the teachers, the principal, the vice principal, and just to kind of uproot him in this manner, especially with the short notice. It's not like that you guys are, not to say you guys, but it's not like these numbers couldn't have been crunched back in April or May. To wait till June, July to notify of this, doesn't give us a whole lot of time to kind of get prepared mentally and kind of have it sink in. So that's just kind of how I wanted to address it. Thank you.
Thank you. It's Dana Clements.
Hi. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I actually work at Bridgeway Island. I'm the librarian there, and I have, what really brings me here is that I'm also a parent. I have a 6th grader and a 4th grader. Fortunately, my 6th grader is not being impacted this year, but I felt it was important to come voice my opinion as the way the current policy is, she could be impacted in the next couple of years. Although I would say, after hearing Jerry speak, I was in the top 10 sleeping overnight at the school in February for both the kids. There's more to it than the policy, though. How I feel about it is Bridgeway is a family. And whatever terms you use to describe the situation, overflow, what the kids feel like is they're getting kicked out of their school, and it's their family. I feel like all the staff, the faculty, the students, we all make a Bridgeway family. And the idea that we can, pull out the last 17 kids that were enrolled and tell them, you're not going to be a part of our family this year. You're going to go to another school. You can come back in a year. We'll re-accept you into our family after a year. It's just not right. We don't know the circumstances for all these children. Everybody, the people that are here right now, I know a lot of them have wonderful homes, lovely homes, safe places, but for some of these kids, school is their safe place. It's the place they feel secure, the place they know they're welcome, and we're really not treating these kids in their best interest if we're saying, we're going to uproot you, we're going to put you in a new situation where you don't know anybody. And, that's after a year, maybe we'll let you come back. It's not just affecting the kids that are being displaced either. It's also affecting the kids. My daughter's really upset. There's a lot of her friends that are being sent away. She's getting texts. Oh no, it's Leanne too. Oh no, it's Lee. Oh, it's Andrew and Alexa. And it's upsetting to her that her friends are leaving. and it's upsetting to her that she thinks that it could happen to her too. I wonder how those poor 17 new kids coming into the school are going to be made to feel. Bridgeway is a very warm community, and I don't anticipate that there's going to be problems, but the kids that are there in 6th grade know which kids weren't there last year, and they know that those kids are taking the places of their friends' spots. So I guess all I want to say is really there has to be a change to the policy where kids that have been going to Bridgeway do not get put into a position where they have to go to another school and for any length of time. And the first priority should be to the students that are already attending Bridgeway. I don't know what other kinds of changes could be made to help the poor 17 this year. A new portable being put out, a standalone class. I'm open to any suggestions that would bring those kids back to our school. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie Finnegan.
Hi, thank you for having us. My husband pretty much said everything that I was going to say. The one concern I have was that, and he pointed it out as well, is that this was not discovered until, I guess, at the end of the school year this year. And I know these numbers could have been crunched sooner. A resolution could have been come to possibly over the summer, a new portable, a new, whatever you guys could have done to alleviate the situation. Because now, even if something is done, my son still will probably end up starting school at a different school, which I think he'll do okay because he's a resilient kid and he has, he's eager to learn, and I think he'll do well. But there is still some anxiety with that, and along with all the other kids that are going to be going through all of this. But I just think that this could have been addressed a lot sooner. It almost felt, and I know it wasn't, it almost felt shady when I found out, because it was the middle of the summer. When I tried to call back, people were out on vacation, and it just was real frustrating because we know these numbers they had to have been known a while ago because this policy's been in place for such a long time. And I don't know, that's really all I wanted to say because he said everything else. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew Finnegan.
Good evening, and I'd like to discuss how I've got overflowed out of Bridgeway. I don't think it's right that I've got overflowed out of Bridgeway because I've already been on the waiting list, and I've been there since 2nd grade. I didn't get overflowed because I wasn't in the district before, but I've already gone to Bridgeway, and I've already wanted to get into Bridgeway, and I don't think it is right for me to go through this again. I know this won't matter, but all my friends are in Bridgeway, and I picked all my classes at Bridgeway too. I'd like to stay at my school with Miss Chin in the school that I've been since I was in 2nd grade. I also plan on playing sports after school, but cannot ride my bike home from practice or games from a school that's so far from my house. I am comfortable at Bridgeway and getting good grades and would prefer not to have to deal with the stress of moving to a new school. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm probably going to misstate this last name here, but William, is it Vasilopoulos?
Got it perfectly. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I want to start off by saying thank you to Ms. Kirby Gonzalez and Mr. Smith for actually I've been in communication with them and appreciate them listening to my concerns and frustrations, which echo many of the frustrations of the parents have already spoken, and Andrew as well. My main focus would be to find a solution to this. We can discuss all day why we weren't notified sooner. That is a big concern for us. But I want to see if there's any opportunity here for discussion on what some alternative solutions are, whether it is bringing in a portable, finding a space for that, keeping the 17 kids in there, and maybe reducing the size of some of the other classes which are maybe at capacity, and rotating in some teachers from Stonegate or Southport or Westmore and having 3 or 4 or 5, I don't know how many teachers need to be rotated in on a daily basis versus 20 families being rotated out. And, you know, for some families it might be have only a single kid at a school, but, you know, say in our case we have, you know, a kid entering 4th grade and the 6th grader being overflowed. So I wanted to see if we have time to discuss solutions here in an open forum or how we go about that. But, you know, for instance, our case, we were only notified on July 10th. We got a phone call. We got a form letter saying that you might be overflowed, or, you know, there's a potential to all families, and we'll follow up with a call. You'll be contact administrator. That only gives us about 30 days from notification. In our case, I have a letter that I wrote and sent to you know, Ms. Kirby Gonzalez and Mr. Smith. But, you know, for our situation, we have 5 kids. So 2 of them are 16 months, 1 of them's 3 years. For any caregiver to be able to drop off 1 kid at, you know, at Stonegate and 1 at Bridgeway, there's not a vehicle that's going to accommodate that for most caregivers. Okay, we got a Suburban, but so we don't have time to make accommodations. Whether it's my mother, my mother-in-law, we have to hire now somebody to be able to pick them up. And there's so the financial considerations in our case, and I'm sure in many of the other cases as well, that this time frame of being notified 30, 40 days ahead doesn't give you time to plan for these types of situations. And, you know, there's economic work schedules that have to be shuffled. So we can sit here and discuss you know, everybody's individual situation, but I want to see if we can focus on a solution for this year, not for the following year. And again, appreciate everybody's, you know, time and effort, but if we can work towards that, I think that's what everybody's looking for, and not breaking up the friends, the families, and the core support group that most of these kids have now developed with the students, the faculty, and the, you know, the teachers and administrators at Bridgeway. So I appreciate your time.
Do we have any board comments?
Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. And I want to reiterate, because I think a lot of people don't realize this, that we are elected by you, and we have an obligation to listen to you. And it doesn't necessarily always have to be at a board meeting. Our emails are on the district website, and email, call when you're upset right away. Because when I found out this was happening, this is, let's see, today was the first day I've heard from parents about how upset they were. And right when I heard we were doing this, only same time as you, about 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, I was mad. It's my neighborhood as well, but even if it wasn't, I'd be mad. I understand absolutely what your frustrations are. Absolutely. We should have known this earlier. You should have been notified earlier. And this policy is not good. And it comes before us. It certainly comes before Jerry Smith's time. We did not create this policy, but we need to change it. It's not a good policy. And so we understand your frustrations, and certainly up here, and don't take them lightly at all. A few things I'd like to talk about. One would be, absolutely, I think that we need to get fixed is transportation. If this is a move and it happens 7:05 at a bus in the morning, that's way too early. Why would a student need to be? I've heard that pickup would be at 7:05 to get students to a school which is only a few miles away. And so transportation is one place that I'd like to look at and discuss what accommodations we're going to make and what time that would be. And as well as siblings. If you have 2 kids and they're riding their bikes together, an older sibling who's with the younger one, I understand absolutely why this is a concern for you. So I would like to look into the bus routes, the sports, and portables. What does it take to get a portable at Bridgeway? I know that you have many students at Bridgeway, Michigan, but I think that we have brought these students in. We created this bad policy, and we need to see it through for students who have entered Bridgeway so that people can feel good about going to Bridgeway, because this doesn't just affect you and your children and their friends. It affects the people who are moving into town and have their kids going into kindergarten and who now don't have trust that their students will stay in the system. And so that we need to look into changing as well, making sure that this is not something that's just revisited in the future. So what would it take to get a portable? And we've talked about self-contained classrooms. Would that 6th grade look like a self-contained classroom? Is that a way to fix space? How would that work in terms of staffing and space? So those are the 3 things that I'd like to look at: busing, time, portables, and possibly self-contained classrooms for the future.
Leland.
Well, I echo the same remarks as Board Member Kirby Gonzalez. When I heard about the policy, actually through Ms. Finnegan, we did get it on the board agenda as quickly, but it would have been nice to have been able to really have this conversation earlier. And again, as board members, even though we didn't create the policy, we're responsible for it. It's our policy, and we have to do something about it. And so, first of all, I just want to thank the parents for reaching out to us. And, you know, we work for you, and we need to hear when something isn't working. And I think this policy in the beginning maybe was an attempt to get students back in to their home school in a short period of time. And so it had a good intention, and as we've grown, certainly a bad outcome. And so we do need to fix it and remedy it. I do want to say, though, before we look into, as we look into alternatives of portable or changing the policy for sure, ongoing, I just want to speak to Andrew for a minute. I want to say, Andrew, wherever you go to school, you are going to make friends because you're just that type of kid. Everybody you're so hard not to like, and I know Andrew, and he's going to do well wherever he goes. I had to go to a different school every single year in a different state until I was in 6th grade. And I survived, and I love school, and I did well. And so I want to just say that. But I just want him to know that I know he's going to make good grades. He's going to have double the friends if this is what has to happen this year. But certainly this is not a good situation, and to bring it forward and to be brave enough to talk about it with us will make a big difference for kids in our community going forward. I live in Bridgeway Island. I'm so proud of your school, Grace. I'm proud of driving by there every single morning and seeing the hustle and bustle. But you created a monster. It just shouldn't be that good. That we do. We have lower attrition in Bridgeway Island than almost any other school. And so even with this policy in place for all of the schools in West Sac, it's Bridgeway Island folks that are here. And so, Grace, you need to take some of the responsibility for this. But all joking aside, this is serious. I absolutely agree with my fellow board members, and I believe staff. Jerry, you presented it well, and Superintendent, that this policy stinks and it needs to be changed. And tonight is the first step for us to kind of gather some information, give some direction to staff to kind of look at other alternatives, and then we would bring it back. And that's the best we can do as elected officials, is to hear it and then try to, gather the information quickly and come back to you. And so again, I appreciate you being engaged with us, and I'm very sorry for what you're having to go through. But I know Andrew is going to be a success wherever he is. Did you hear that, Andrew? Yeah.
Thank you, Mary. And I too would like to thank all the parents for coming out. As Ms. Kirby Gonzalez says, you elected us. We're here to listen, whether it's email, phone calls, and I know all of us receive phone calls 10, 11 o'clock at night, Saturday, Sundays, but that's what you elected us to do. But for you coming here tonight and making us aware of these issues and these concerns and of the policies and procedures that were made before we got here, and just like Ms. Leland said, we are responsible. We're on the board now. Unfortunately, I don't know Andrew. I hope to get to know Andrew.
Oh, he's cool.
But it also takes a lot to come up in front of all of us, Andrew, and tell us your feelings. So I do appreciate you addressing us tonight. Thank you. I know the board takes all your concerns very seriously, and it's not on deaf ears. And in my mind, it truly warrants a review of our policy and procedures. These policies and procedures may have worked years ago, but times change, our communities are growing, and we need to definitely change our policies and procedures. So again, thank you very much, and we'll be talking to staff and giving some guidance and working with them. So thank you. Dr. Gillian, did you want to? No, you're good. Okay. That brings us to action items. Number 1, to approve the 2014-15 Washington Unified School District 45-day revised budget.
It's all good news. So I will be as brief as I possibly can. When we came and saw you at, you guys.
You know how to clear a room.
I'm good. Every time I get up and talk about the financials, everybody leaves. So. That's okay. I go with them, but.
This is good news.
We brought you the budget at the end of June. We told you that the budget that you were approving was going to change because the governor's budget had been approved just prior to us bringing the budget to you. But with the LCAP and everything, we wanted to bring you the draft budget and then the budget that you approved, and then come back with a 45-day revise to give you the updates on the changes that the governor made. So with that, we'll start out with what we'll have at the front of every one of our budget presentations. We're going to reinforce the strategic priorities of the board and the management agenda that supports it, because that is the guiding principles for budget development and any revisions that we make. In bringing the budget forward, we always bring you the estimated ending fund balance. This document is identical to what you saw in June, with the exception of the figure at the very top, the $10,256,000 increased from what you saw at the end of June by about $58,000. So the ending fund balance at the end of 13-14 coming into 14-15 is getting a little bit stronger. It does have the probability of swinging the other way, because as we pull the information out of the financial system and put it into the SACS model, it's as of that date. So they're in the process of closing the books for 13-14. So when we pulled this information last week, that ending fund balance for 13-14 was as of that date. So adjustments have happened since then. It could go up a little bit more, it could go down a little bit more. It's a little bit fluid, but we're right in that area of where we thought we were going to be in the first place. So the major changes for the 45-day revise to the budget is there was an adjustment to the local control funding formula, if you remember, and I'll show you on a slide. We said that the percentage of the funding gap that we were going to get went up, and so that's going to give us about $340,000 more for 14-15 than we said in June. We also are going to get a one-time mandated cost reimbursement of $475,000. That's our estimate. They're going to make a payment against a mandate credit card, $66 per ADA. We use an estimated amount of $7,200. It's $475,000. We booked it in the budget as revenue. It's going to be a placeholder until we get a little bit closer and find exactly how much you're going to pay, and then we'll figure out what we want to do with it. This is a piece of the budget that you may have heard that there was inference that this money should be spent on Common Core. And I think what the governor and the Department of Finance and the legislature is saying is it's highly recommended that you spend it on Common Core. They can't tell you you have to spend it on Common Core because it is a reimbursement for an expense that you incurred in a prior year. So this money, as it comes into the district's budget, is unrestricted general fund money that the board can use in any manner they so choose. When you hear them say, boy, you should really think about Common Core, what that says to me is they didn't fund Common Core fully in that 2-year cycle. This might be the only other Common Core money that you get. So we'll have to consider how we want to move forward with that. We might not get an additional round of Common Core funding because they talked about putting a round in this budget and they didn't. They put this mandate reimbursement in there and then tried to tie it to Common Core. So we'll see how that plays out. We'll have some conversations with Bill and his group about the best way to move forward with it, because we know the money that we got is not going to put all the technology in the classrooms that we want and the professional development, the teaching tools and all that kind of stuff. So we'll come back to you with a plan on what we think the best use of that money is, knowing that that is one-time money. So we'll use it for one-time expenses. Early childhood education got an increase in their per student funding of 5%. That increased the revenue of that fund by $62,000. CalSTR's employer contribution rate decreased. We talked about that. It went down by 0.62%. So we're going to get a reduction in the expense this year of $194,000. Can't get too excited about it because that 7 or 8 year cycle, the top number is the same. So when they originally put the budget out, there was a jump of like 1.5%. Well, it's not that high of a jump this year, but incrementally over the next 7 years, we still end up at that 19.82%. They just pushed it down the road a little bit. And we balanced our retiree benefit costs, and that's going to cost an additional $263,000 this year. So here's the LCFF target. The target number, $67,954,000. Again, it's the same. All those numbers are going to be what you saw for 14-15 originally. The big change is that 29.56 used to be 28.4, I believe. And that's what created the additional $340,000. When we brought this to you in June, we thought it was going to be about 310 when we changed that percentage, and turned out to be about 340. So that's really the only change in the local control funding formula. The 3-year forecast then for the general fund it still is solvent. 14-15, you see an increase in your revenue over expenses, which is going to increase your ending fund balance because we just saw an increase in revenue of some $800,000, almost $1 million, offset by some additional expenses. So it went up about $700,000. And you see that in your net increase, which is now $1.3 million. It was $560 on June 24th. So it went up. All that went to the undesignated part of the unrestricted general fund, so it's saying in fund balance. Future years, we are funding the increase at 3%. The Department of Finance is at 6%. I think it's interesting, and it was noted in the write-up for this document that the second year out, which is 15-16, originally was going to be some 23 or 24% funding increase. It dropped down to like 19. So the future years are dropping the amount down, then they're pushing it up again later. So they're already seeing that it's leveling off a little bit. So that's why we'll continue to be conservative. This is the model that the board has supported and directed us in. So 50 cents on a dollar for the Department of Finance's estimates. If they start truing that number up, then we'll do what we did this year, and we'll bring in a higher revenue number. But until we see it, we think this is the best way to go. Either way, you have a positive ending fund balance across the board, both restricted and unrestricted, as far as revenues over expenses, and funding ending fund balance is growing proportionally. And as always, your future years and the current years have no dollars in the expense lines for ongoing salary enhancements. Talk about Fund 12, the contribution really quick. When we first brought this to you, it was $98,000 as a deficit. That additional $62,000 brought the deficit down to $36,000. And this whole thing's off a little bit, so you can't quite see the whole slide. But we will continue to have conversations with the program administrator on how we can balance that fund. It's off a little bit. Same comment as we had in June. If for some reason there is a structural problem with Fund 12, we'll come back to the board with recommendations on how to fix it, even if fixing it means that we look at the possibility of having an ongoing contribution to the fund in an interim. We had some conversations today about how we could be a little bit more entrepreneurial with the fund and do some things to have the fund raise revenue on its own by having a fee-for-service model in it outside of just the regular state preschool, which is an allowable option. So we started looking at that opportunity today as well. So we'll continue to work on that fund and try and get it balanced, and we'll bring recommendations to you if it needs some support from long-term solvency. So the next steps for this budget, are actually pretty simple. We're presenting the budget to you in a format for adoption. The 45-day revise for the current year plus 2 years is a fiscally solvent budget and deserves a positive certification. We recommend one, and we'll continue to monitor the budget and we'll provide you updates at the interim reports as we've done in the past. That's it. Questions, comments?
Well, I do have a public comment on this one.
Mr. Stoffer?
John Stoffer, yes.
Hi, thank you. Actually, it's a couple of questions. I guess I'll put the questions out there and Mr. Langsberger can respond. On the general fund, page 1 of the general fund, it under revenues, item number 3, other state revenues, they decreased by 24.9%. Could there be an explanation of what those are and why they're changing? Then under expenditures, I think he very rapidly said something that may have answered the question in his brief report, but under expenditures, item B, which is 1, 2, and 3, what assumptions have been built into those calculations to explain the changes between 13-14 and 14-15? Thank you.
Madam Vice President, would you like Mr. Landsberger to respond to those questions now or to report back to Mr. Stoffer at a later time?
Do you have that information now?
You know, as far as the specific questions, I'm going to have to go back and look. I'd have to look. I might, looking at them, be able to come up with part of it, but to actually answer what he's asking, I need to go back and look at some of the details. I didn't prepare myself to answer specific details, if that's okay.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
He'll get back to you later.
Thank you, Scott.
Ms. Sarah Gonzalez, Kirby Gonzalez.
I have a question. So when we look at the Fund 12 contribution and the possible fee for service that the discussion was today, but I know that there has been discussion in the past too of having fee for service to have a sliding scale for preschool. And so I'm hopeful that we can move forward on that and find a plan to make that happen.
And that was part of the conversation, and if there was a sliding scale, who's going to be responsible for determining the sliding scale, who's going to be responsible for monitoring, making sure that if someone said, oh, my income is this, the verifications and all that kind of stuff. So this is a conversation as we go to that. I think we end up having not just internally with our own administration, but with our partners in the early childhood education realm within the city. So it's going to be a broader conversation. But
and I know that they told me, I asked Justine with the city, and she said they had that conversation. So is this something that typically is done then with the director of the preschool program, who will then work with others to do that? Is that typically how this would work?
Typically, yes. The conversation that we had internally today was myself, Mr. Spalding, and she's an FS.
Talina Camilli, who's the early education expert, and the person probably most intimate with the program.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have a director currently for our preschool program?
We're working to address that internally. We have something that we'd like to bring back to the board at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have anything?
No, I just want to thank you for the report. It's nice to get a 45-day revise where we've actually have some significant increases. Been on the board in years where we've had decreases at this point, so it's refreshing to see. Thank you, Scott, for your work.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And I too thank you. It's refreshing to see that money's trickling in little by little, but every little bit helps. So thank you for the update.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Do we have a motion to approve the 2014-15 45-day revised budget?
I'll approve the 2014-2015 Washington Unified School District 45-day revised budget.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Action item number 2, the Sunshine Washington Unified School District bargaining proposal to WTA for fiscal year 2014-15.
Thank you. The Washington Unified School District is proposing to open 2 articles, Article 5, Transfer and Reassignment Procedure, and Article 17, Compensation Appendix A, for negotiations with WTA, and requests the board's approval.
Comments, questions? Can we get a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve action item 2, Sunshine Washington Unified School District's bargaining proposal to WTA for fiscal year 2014-2015.
I'll second the motion.
All those who agree?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those that oppose? Next are the consent items.
Madam President, I would like to pull item 8, the agreement between Los Rios Community College District and WSD, to vote on it separately or to remove it from the agenda. You can just pull it? Okay.
We'll just pull it. You okay with that? We'll just pull it at this time, item number 8. Any other discussions or motions?
No, I'll make a motion that we approve the consent item agenda with number 8 pulled.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? At this time, we're going to adjourn back into closed session to conclude our closed session. You want to do future action items before we go in?
The only one I have is to make sure that we have the overflow back on the
The
agenda.
future action
So,
items,
yeah.
to make sure the overflow stays on our radar. Anything else there?
I would like to see the tech budget, the technology budget, please.
Okay, with that, we will resume closed session.